Oh, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Good. How is everybody? I hope you're well. I see we've got our two resident principal experts with us tonight. I'm glad. I got a lot of questions for them tonight that they're completely unprepared for. That's the best part. Did we ever find out? I see I'm recording tonight because when I came on, it said I am the host now. Somebody claimed the host or was made host last week and it didn't, it recorded, but not on my machine. Has anybody seen the recording from last week that it processed on you? If you did, just let me know and we'll see if we can get it. But if not, we're good. I've got the one from last semester, so we're fine. Everything's good. Well, welcome back. Hope everybody's doing well. I think a couple of our classmates are doing better. And so I'm glad to see that. Let me share my screen.
No.
And so let me go over here to this one. And so we're doing well on our assignments. We've had one of our colleagues who's been sick, but she's back in the game now. So prayers and welcome back to Wendy. Hope she's doing well. But I think everybody else is doing very good. I want to talk a little bit to kick off the evening about the OMA. I can stop my share. So a lot of you have finished task 3, which is great, and you're moving to task 4. You know, in task 4, you write your competencies. As we talked about last week, you can pick the 12 that you want to write that you think are most appropriate for the work that you've done in the OMA this semester. Now, please remember, there is no peer review for task 4. It's how would a peer review that? That's you, what you think you've done. So when you complete task 4, you upload discussion board. What I'm going to tell you is excellent. It's all there. Everything is good. You got 12 in there. If you got 11, we'll do 10 next time. But if you got 10 or 11, 12, you'll be good of those competencies. And I'm going to tell you to compile it into your final evidence narrative. Now, we all know that's the terminology that we use. It will say OMA final evidence narrative, and we know that it contains all 4 tasks. Then we will submit that for review, and then we'll upload that in the assignment Dropbox, and then we will upload it, that OMA final evidence narrative with all 4 tasks in our Turnitin check. Now, this is very important. You know that we can only do it one time in the OMA Turnitin check. You get one, it's a one and done. You get one shot. And if you put one in there that's like first 3 tasks and don't have the 4th, you say, oh, I better go back. It won't work. It's got to be all 4 tasks you get one time. Now, please remember, you do not get the report. I get the report. Gardner-Webb does not pay for you to get the report. That's a separate function. They're not going to do that. So, and as soon as it pops up, I will check your number. The number that we're looking to be less than is 40. Let me say that again. We're looking for your number to be less than 40. Now, it's going to be 40 based on, close to that, based on you copied your tasks 1, 2, and 3 from last semester. So that's going to be 40 right there. Now, so I'm looking for the number to be less than 40 or 40 or less on that. And then with the other things, so the total number that I'm looking for out of 100, I'm looking for a 40% match from last semester on tasks 1, 2, and 3. That's standard. But altogether, it shouldn't be more than 60. So that's 20% really. So 20% is our usual standard. But it's going to end up being 60 because 40% is going to be a match from last semester. So I'm looking for the total to be 60 or less out of 100. If it's not, I'll help you get it there. But so remember, we don't peer review task 4. Once task 4 has been approved by me, and it'll be that quick, you'll put all 4 tasks together into your OMA final evidence narrative. You'll upload it for review. Then you'll upload it in your assignment Dropbox, and then you will upload it into Turnitin Check. I'll tell you excellent, submit for evaluation in TaskStream, and then you will take it to TaskStream. And please remember, in TaskStream, we do not request comments. It goes for evaluation. And please remember, when you upload it for evaluation, when you upload, it will, you save and return, and it comes out, and there's a little flashing button that says you submit work. You have to make sure that you both upload, save and return, and then on the back screen, when it pops back up to the front screen, submit work. If not, it will just hang there. And then you'll say, well, why didn't they get to my work? Well, remember, none of us can see your work until you submit. Even I can't see it until you submit. It just shows an in progress. So you upload, save, submit. Remember that you upload on your work page. I'm going to go in and remind you how to do that. I'll go in as a student, share screen, share. All right, so please remember, you should go into TaskStream. Some of you will get there before we meet again. You go into TaskStream from Chrome. Do not try to go in from Edge, Microsoft Edge. You should use the Chrome browser. You can also use the Mozilla Firefox browser, but it's best to use Chrome. Go into TaskStream. When you go in, when you sign in, TaskStream, sign in. Okay, I'm going to go in as a student. You don't have that option to go in as a student, but you are already a student. And so I'll go in as, let's see, school admin spring 22. That's what you, those fall 20, excuse me. Let's see, school admin fall 20. See if I've got that. Yep, right here. You'll go in school administration add-on fall 20. This should be the only DRF you have. And so you'll go in, and of course it'll look like this. And so you'll go down to your, make sure you're on your work screen right here. Make sure you're on your work screen. Go to OMA, click on OMA, attachments, upload from computer, add files. Find your OMA final evidence narrative. I'm just going to pick one of these. Yours should say OMA final evidence narrative in your last name. Upload and close. Save and return. Are you ready to submit your work? Okay. And then there's the little reminder, submit. Yes, submit my work. And when you got that confirmation, you're good to go. You are good to go once that is done. But you must go through all of those steps. Now, please remember when you do that, you'll end up on your scores results page, and it'll show you what you've uploaded. And so you can see that one has been submitted. You can cancel it for, I think, for about 30 minutes, but please don't do that. And then you should return your screen back to the work screen, so you'll be ready to upload the next one. Or you can come back and check on scores results, and you should get an email when it's graded. But please remember, we work off of our work screen, we upload, and we go through all the screens, and then the final one we submit. And until we get a confirmation, it is not submitted until you get a confirmation. You'd be surprised how many folks do not get this done, that have so many of them that are hung. And then once it's in there, you can expect for it to be graded between 24 and 48 hours. It will not be longer than 48 hours. It hopefully will be within the first 24 hours that you submit that. Okay, I'm going to pause and catch my breath. So this is your task stream reminder. Some of you will be here before we meet again next week. I will pause and catch my breath and ask, does anybody have any questions on the process for submitting their OMA? When you finish it, some of you are going to finish this week. That is the process that you go through. I'll simply give you a reminder for the next couple of weeks. Anybody have any questions on completing and uploading their OMA for state evaluation? We all good? All right, so I can check that. I can check that off my list. Partial work. Quick question, backtracking from, do we have to include any? No. There's no supporting research. Competency analysis is you get to argue for your competency. You don't have to cite anybody. You just say, I did this and I did that. By doing this and that, that's why I'm competent in this. This is your opinion. The proof comes when we do competency folio. You have to attach the artifacts that show you did the work that you said did. But in competency analysis, you don't have to have anything other than I did this and I should be, and that's why I'm competent. You get to argue your case for competency. That's a great question. Remember, competency analysis is you arguing, making a verbal argument, just like you have to do at principal evaluation time about why you've achieved these things. And then you show us the evidence of that through the actual artifact. So this is your opportunity to make your case that I have met this competency standard. That's excellent.
I have a question about that because that's kind of confusing to me. In 601, we had to do that as well, but then we had to attach, we use that same, like, I guess, summary that we put in our APSO and APSO. We use that summary and then attach the artifacts. So are we not doing that? I know you said that, we don't have to do the artifact yet.
That's in the competency folio. We're only doing, we're only worried about competent. We'll talk about folio and what you have to do in that later. For this part right now in task 4, it's simply competency analysis. You just tell us why you are. Now we'll link that to an artifact later on, but we don't have to. After 601, we're going to give you the option that you don't have to link. You got to have artifacts, but you don't have to link the one that you wrote you were competent in the OMA. That will be a little bit of a change. We're going to give you a little more freedom. Remember, gradual release. We let you step forward and tell us what you think it ought. So what you're asking in effect is the 12 that you write this time, and you tell us later on, will you have to have an artifact proof for each of those 12 that says that? No, you won't. If you have them, that's fine. But you can show us an artifact from something else that you did. They don't have to be linked after your first.
Okay, thank you.
A little more free form. But you don't have to have any research or any references or any artifacts for your competency analysis in task 4 of the OMA. Again, you have to learn to argue on your own that I'm competent. Now, if you cite something from a state standard or whatever that you think helps make your point, that's fine, but you don't have to. If you can make a succinct argument, you don't have to. Remember, we show you how tight it is, and then we loosen. You step forward and say, I think I can show this through that. But no, we will not make you link the same 12 that you wrote in competency analysis to 12 artifacts later. We will not make you do that link this time. You might have something better to show us other than that. Who knows? We'll see. And so one of the things, and I want both of our principal residents to speak to this. I'm glad you asked that. I've got on my list for them to talk about tonight is about the notion of incomplete work what the expectation is from a school administrator in terms of, I've gotten a few this semester, more than I normally get, of people uploading tasks that are incomplete, that just have, that what they sent me was good, but it's not complete. Now, one of the things I was famous for doing, and I've actually seen people get in their car and leave when I would arrive on campus, run through the building screaming and get in their car and leave. I haven't always been this pleasant. And one of the things that I was famous for asking principals that I supervised is, what were you doing that we weren't paying you for, that prevented you from doing what we were paying you for? Let me help you. If you need help with time management, I will be happy to assist you with that. I will arrange it so that you have all the time in the world to do those things that we weren't paying you for. I can help you with this problem. And so it became, you know, in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, we worked on 424. You better get to what, I don't care if it's the middle of the night, you better get to whatever the problem is in 4 hours. I don't care if you're on the dark side of the moon, you better get to this problem in 4 hours. And we expect a resolution in 24 hours. Not that you just getting around to it, or we expect a resolution. That was first rule, 424. Second rule was, if we ask you for A, B, and C, we better get A, B, and C. No excuse. You never send us anything partial. If you send us something partial, that means you didn't send us anything, because we're not going to read it but one time, period. Once. That's all we're going to do. We're going to read it one time. And the second time you do that, it's time for a new ox. Now, you understand the biblical reference of new ox. In the Bible, it says that you got to go, that you should be in church on Sunday. The only exception is if your ox is in the ditch, you can get your ox out. That means you have an emergency. But if your ox is in the ditch every Sunday, you need a new ox. If I have to come out every week or every month and want to know where your PMR is, or your you know, where your numbers, where, you know, the things that I have asked you to do that are required for state and federal funding, that you haven't turned your documents in each month, or you haven't turned in your evaluation documents that I've requested, if I have to come out the second time, I'm going to be hunting me a new ox. So we've got to get in the habit of A, not being late, and B, making sure that we turn in completely. So I'm going to ask our resident principals, one's in Durham and one's in Franklin. Probably their people aren't as ugly or rude as I am, but their experiences with administrative expectations in their districts in terms of being able to produce their evaluation documents, to find and write up the things that they've done, to be able to locate the artifacts that the state says that you should have at evaluation time, that list them for each of the standards, what the expectation is on turning reports in, or work of the principal's office, because tonight is the role of the principal. We're going to get to that in just a minute, but set us up for tonight's talk about the role of the principal with what is the expectation in your districts. Dr. Hallman, I'm going to start with you.
You covered a lot of different things, you know, that I guess would probably fall on us. You know, the 424 rule. I think communication has always been one of the key roles of the principal. You know, in the eyes of our district, we are the focal communicators for our school, whether that is by virtue of our own communication, or we're responsible for everybody else's communication that flows from our building. So, you know, I make sure that all of that at least has some level of check off, so that I can see that. I'm not saying we troll social media, but you should be aware of all aspects of communication that leave you, because at the end of the day, it's a reflection on the school and then yourself. And I feel like for us, if it's disciplinary, anything at all, go back to the discussion we've had regarding, you know, requirements for, you know, informing our district office if things are occurring, whether it's a EMS being called on the campus, or a disciplinary issue that requires you know, someone to be notified because of high priority protocols that we have. all of those things. And then, my I guess key role is to make sure that we handle things within our building, if at all possible. I don't want a parent to not get a return phone call from a teacher, from a counselor, or from myself, and then they end up calling the superintendent secretary, one of our directors, central office staff. That then becomes their problem that they then shunt back to me anyway. So better that we have protocols and procedures in place on our campus to address all of that. And I think good communication has always been the key for me. If we've got things mapped out well, the procedures are mapped out well, people know where the flow charts are, who to call and how to address it. And then I do a good job of delegating the tasks to those people that I know are capable of accomplishing those. You get a lot more done. If you try to let everything come onto your desk to be solved, a lot of things are going to be left undone. So you got to have a good team and a trust factor there to make sure those things have been taken care of.
Thank you. Dr. Griffin Jordan.
I agree with all of that. I want to hone in on that trust factor, especially as a new principal. Crucial that you have the trust in your personnel, especially like your bookkeeper, the person that handles your finances, your data manager. There are monthly reports that must be submitted. Can't be late, can't be wrong. And that is your person of expertise. Coming into the school, of course, I sat with her, I took copious notes, but it's a lot. So there's a level of trust that I've got to know that she's going to submit things on my behalf to the district. Also, for discipline, we use Educator's Handbook. There has to be an upload monthly for all of your discipline infractions. It cannot be late. So that's something that me and my assistant principal make sure all of our discipline is addressed and handled and resolved so that we can upload that report monthly. Communication is big, 48 hours, but we try to push it to 24. If there's any way we can handle things in 24 hours, we can do so. If there's some investigation or follow-up that needs to take place, just a courtesy phone call saying, I did get your message, give me a little bit of time. It goes a long way because at least the parent knows that you are aware that they have a concern. Observations and evaluations, the district is strict about principals maintaining those deadlines for comprehensive and standard evaluations. We just had our mid-years up now, so they expect 100% completion. And it trickles down, just like we expect teachers to be on time, the district expects us to be on time. And they expect us to provide timely feedback. Once we go in to evaluate a teacher, we can't meet with them 3 weeks later about that lesson because it's a moot point. Same thing I tell my teachers, if you have an assessment and you give a student a test, grading it and putting it in Power School 3 weeks later is a moot point. You've moved on. So I've noticed that I've got to constantly practice what I preach. If I'm expecting my teachers to be on time and timely, and I know they're expecting their students to be on time and timely, then I have to model that behavior as well.
I think we can kind of summarize this section with can't be late, can't be wrong, can't be incomplete. Not make it in this business. These are lessons that you must learn now. Can't be late, can't be wrong, and can't be incomplete, can't be partial. You can't, if you got 6 new initially licensed teachers and they require 6 observations during the year, if you got 4 of them done and the 2 you didn't get around to, well, that's pretty good, 2/3. No, that ain't pretty good. Because 2, you did not complete 2. And so that's the notion here. I don't want to belabor this point about, but the role of the principal there is a document that I have tonight that tells us what the role of the principal is, according to state law, 115C 288, what the role of the principal is. And I also have the ethical piece that has to go along with that, which is basically the educator standards that go along with that, that's also written into your contract, the 4 ethical paradigms. But to put it in context, what you've got to understand is, before I reveal that to you, is you can't be wrong, you can't be late, you can't be partial on any of these things. Because if you are, then you're going to be guilty of negligence in some way, either misfeasance, malfeasance, or nonfeasance. And you can be held liable financially for these. Not only are you going to lose your job, you're going to lose your house. You've got to understand, misfeasance is you did the wrong thing. You didn't intend to, but you did the wrong thing. Malfeasance is you intentionally did the wrong thing. Or nonfeasance, and that's the big part, you just didn't get to it. You didn't have enough time. You had something else take your time. You didn't handle your business. You didn't get it done. And that becomes a negligence suit. There's a reason why all this stuff has to be done on time. You can't not do the things you're supposed to do and then non-renew a beginning teacher at the end of the year. Doesn't work that way. Does not work that way. So this sets the context. It's also our discussion board for the week. You know, educators are found financially liable. You know, but for negligence, well, you got to understand the three negligences, the three types of negligence: miss, mal, and nonfeasance. But you also got to understand that it works hand in hand with due process. Due process is, this is what, you know, substantive due process says, this is what we're going to do. The state district guidelines, the state guidelines, the federal guidelines, this is what we're going to do. This is due process. It's in discipline, it's in exceptional children, it's in athletics, it's in academics, it's in clubs. You know, these are the criteria to get into the National Honor Society. This is how all this stuff works. There's due process in every facet. That's the substance. What are you supposed to get? And then the procedural, did you and the people that you empowered in your school, as Dr. Griffin Jordan said, that you trust, did they get it right? Did they follow through? Did they do the things that they were supposed to do? But it all circles back. You can delegate the activity, but not the responsibility. It all comes back to you. So when we talk about the role of the principal, we don't go through, I'm setting this in context. We don't go through and say, yeah, we do that. No, we don't. Or I do that sometimes. Each one of these things is an absolute every time. On time, complete, and right every time. So here they are. So this is tonight's lesson, the role of the principal. Share my screen. Let me log out of this before it times me out. So here it is. This is in North Carolina General Statutes. 115C is public education. There's 545 statutes. 288 is duties and powers of the principal. And so I'm not going to sit and read all these to you, but we're going to highlight these, and I'm going to have a couple of questions for our resident principals. The first one is to grade and classify pupils. Surprise, surprise, our first case study is on grading and classifying pupils. This is the one that you will deal with every day. You will deal with this one in some form every day. And it is, you are the person who has the authority. You're the only person in the building. You're the only person in the district. The superintendent can't even overrule you. You're the only person by state law who can assign a grade to a child. Teachers do not assign grades. If you haven't figured that out by now, that may be news to some of you, but teachers don't give grades. They have a grade book. The principal is the person who legally assigns the grade. And you have to make sure that due process is upheld in that. And so our first case study, well, cheating strike Bobby out, is a case of a teacher Who fails a kid for a year for cheating on a throwaway class assignment, out of class assignment? And please don't be that person who argues, well, it said that they may fail it. That simply means they can fail that particular assignment. You can't, federal law says you can't fail a kid for a year. That's a zero tolerance suspension, and those are illegal because there's no due process. You got to know those things as a principal. You can't fail a kid for a year over a class assignment, especially if it falls outside the grading policy for the state and district, and it does. So I've already given the first case study away. And please don't be one of those people who argue, well, we'll support the teacher in public, but in private, we'll tell her she was wrong. That's the same as do you remember when you were a little kid and your mama said, if your friend jumped off the roof, would you jump off with them? The answer is supposed to be no. If the teacher wants to sacrifice her job in her house, that's her business. But I don't choose to do that. We do not say, well, I'll support you in public to the parents, but when I get you behind closed doors, you shouldn't have done that. If she shouldn't have done it, then you can't support her in public. That this notion that will help the teacher save face, absolutely not. Two wrongs don't make a right. Because she's willing to sacrifice her house, you shouldn't be. Now, that's kind of one of those things that teachers expect principals to do. If they do something wrong, that the principal will cover up for them. No. Dissuade, get that out of your mind right now. And so this is the biggest one. This is the one you're going to deal with the most. It's about, you say, well, Dale, how can it be that big? Well, I'll tell you how it can be that big. It has everything to do with class rank, valedictorian, salutatorian, scholarships at the high school level. It has to do with retention and promotion in elementary school. It has to do with clubs, organizations, academic eligibility, honor society. It has to do with everything. It has to do with AG placement. It has to do with EC placement. So it's at the heart of what we do, and that's why it's the first. But it is your sole responsibility to make sure that it happens as it's supposed to. And so my question to my colleagues tonight is this: how often do you have to deal with something of this nature at your school? And I'll just stop at that. How often do you have to deal with something that's grade or classification, or that has something that emanates from this state law, 115C 288A? Dr. Griffin Jordan, I'll start with you.
Very often. We do have a couple of teachers that we give teachers the liberty to set their grading scale. We have, like, the departments have a general overall scale, but teachers within the class are given the flexibility to say, if a student doesn't turn something in, okay, if it's late, then you take off 10 points a day, or just little things like that. So the teachers do have the flexibility for that. Teachers do know, and they've been told, at the end of the day, the principal is responsible for the grading. Usually don't have too many problems, but there are a couple of teachers that will give 59. Personally, especially if you have a student that has come to tutoring and is trying, I have an issue with the 59. Like you said, that failing grade in high school, that 1 point determines a whole lot. It has a very large ripple effect, from driver's eligibility to sports, to scholarships, to clubs, that 1 point. So I've had to have, and honestly, it's one teacher that each year we have to have the conversation, because she says, well, that's what, it came up to a 58.9. So rounded is a 59. And, that's what I'm going to give. And then she'll say, well, but you're the principal, you have the right to overturn it. And
Appreciate you
she'll leave it
acknowledging
at that. And then we'll talk about it. And I'll say, well, thank you so much. And I will let the student know. I mean, just so they know it. But most teachers are compliant, and they know that 59, not saying give it to students. Okay, tell the students to come in and give them an oral exam, tell them to work some problems. Or there's something that the student can do for 1 point. So that's something that we have constantly gone over with that one teacher, and then a couple others, but this one teacher, it seems like every semester is somebody.
Dr. Holloman?
I guess over the years, you have varying degrees of conversations with your school improvement team and your departments about grading. During COVID and closure, I think we also saw, I think our district made some significant suggestions, probably more than anything, about providing grace, especially for those students who were remote and may not have had instant access. So they had until midnight to turn an assignment in, but then they were given additional time also. So this year, with us being more normal back in the building, we actually had a lot of discussions this summer about what grading would look like. And we do require all of our departments to have a consistent grading scale. They use both formative and summative assessments as their primary buckets, and then things need to filter into those too, whether it's classroom assignments or homework, quizzes, tests, projects. And we then give them some flexibility on what those things are, but we do have a minimum number of formative and summative assessments that they need to provide each grading period. We do give them that expectation, because if you didn't, some people would do 1 grade a week, or they would do 5 days worth of something and then call it 1 grade. Parents see that, and that's when usually I get the first phone call is something's not updated in Power School on a regular basis. They don't know where their child's current stands with grading, and so then it comes to either myself or one of the assistant principals, and then we have to talk to the teacher and find out why something hasn't been updated. Everything's very transparent with grading now, especially with Parent Portal. Parents know when grades have last been updated. We can all see that. We can see what grades are there. We can see what's in progress. Comments are available. So the teacher has a lot of different options there. We did do something this year that I think helped to give the flexibility to the student and also hold them accountable. We do not give 50s for zeros. We hold a 0 as a 0. I don't like 59s either, Dr. Griffin Jordan. I think that there's a number there that we should all provide a little bit of a 1 point grace. But we gave all of our students last year and this year the opportunity to do an academic contract. They can enter into it if they choose to. It's available to the student to bring it up to the teacher. The teacher can offer it to the student. A counselor can bring it to a teacher on a student's behalf, and a parent can even be the one to initiate it. They can go back and actually begin making up work. Let's say they had a really terrible first 4 or 5 weeks to the semester, and they just didn't have anything in place. They can enter this contract and they can begin going back and making up previous assignments as long as they are current in the assignments of the day. So I'm going to take care of the stuff I got to do today and tomorrow, but the teachers then allow them to go back and work on their previous assignments. They can only earn 50% of the earned credit for a formative assessment, and they can earn 80% for summative assessments. So there's a catch to it. They won't get full credit, but for that student who didn't do anything and the zeros holding them back, it's a way to encourage them to actually become involved in the class, be invested. And we did do that because of really a lot of conversations last year about students who were just, disengaged. I think the joke we began to say is, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? Well, I don't know and I don't care. We heard that a lot, and kids just say, I just don't care. Well, what's the motivation to get them to care? How can we get them to actually want to be involved? So we have done a lot of discussion regarding holding expectations for teachers, regarding number of assignments, kinds of assignments, and overall assessments. and then also for the student to give them that flexibility. So the last, probably I'd say 2 years, 3 years with COVID, and now back into the game of face-to-face daily learning, grading has actually been more of a conversation because we're trying to hold expectations while at the same time providing grace and accountability. So school improvement team, the last work day, we actually went back and revisited all of it to make sure we were all on the same page again.
Excellent. The bottom line here is grades are supposed to be reflective of the achievement of the students have displayed. It's supposed to be an indicator of their learning. It's not supposed to be a blunt instrument to beat them with. To that end, when both of our resident experts talk about grace or some flexibility, they're talking about in assignment deadlines, makeup, those kinds of things. They're not talking about manipulating the grading scale. The State Board of Education says that the state exam will count between 25 and 35%, no more, no less. And then everything flows from that. And the district adopts a policy in terms of how much state exams, how much local assessments, how much classwork, homework assignments, and out-of-class assignments count. Those cannot be manipulated. That's not what we're talking about, flexibility. We're talking about kids who miss an assignment, turning in. How much will you count late work? What will you let them do? So don't think that I can, well, this test over here, they did pretty good, so I'll count it, more than the state test. No, you can't do that. That's not the flexibility that we're talking about. In our first case study, a teacher took a out-of-class assignment, which can count all of them cumulatively for the entire year, can't count more than 10% of the final grade, and used it and counted that one assignment that was probably worth less than 1 point for the whole yearly grade, and manipulated it so that it counted more than 50% of the yearly grade, and was able to fail that kid. Well, that means that kid's excluded for a whole year. That's a zero tolerance exclusion, which is a violation of federal law. It's also a violation of due process law. So that's when we talk about grading. You have the grade scale that is adopted by your district that talks about how much the point value is homework, how much is classwork, how much is out of class assignment, local assessments, teacher-made assessment, and state assessment. All 6 of those things are addressed in the local scale, but there is some leeway in assignment due dates, as Dr. Hallman said. If you get 50 is better than 0, 80 is better than a 0. That's when we're talking about discretion, not discretion to fail a kid for a year over one out-of-class assignment. So, but these are the things that you have to watch. These are the conversations that you have to have. You have to understand grading is the thread that runs through everything we do in school, because it reflects student achievement. What do they do at John Sausage when I go around the loop on 40 and go around Raleigh, the outer belt, and head south on 40, heading toward Leamington? The first exit on the right to Garner is John Sausage Road. What do they do at John Sausage? They make sausage. You know what we do in public school? We teach kids. That's what we do. It's all about student achievement. And because it's all about achievement, the common thread that runs through everything we do is grading. Everything. And so you have to, more than anything else, take seriously your responsibility to grade and classify students. I'm not going to spend as much time on all of them, but this is the 800-pound gorilla that sits on your couch in your office as a principal. You are responsible for this. You're responsible to make sure teachers understand grace, forgiveness, and those kinds of things, and that they don't manipulate the district adopted scale to punish a kid, or they don't, as Dr. Hall would say, string together 3 or 4 things that they just kind of did incidentally and call it a grade. That what's going on in those rooms, and that those grades accurately reflect, those summative and formative assessments accurately reflect what a kid has and hasn't done. And that we don't use grades as a blunt instrument, as a weapon against kids. We try to use them to motivate kids so that they're not apathetic and ignorant.
I'll mention one thing if I can, just because
Go right ahead.
about grading, the high school level too, if you ever are in a position where you have to make a decision regarding a grade, don't forget GPA matters in every single area, including valedictorian and salutatorian. And parents are always aware of other people's GPAs. If you change a grade, if you adjust a grade, if you do anything, it will never be someone else's fault. It will always be yours. So when you have the ultimate responsibility, you've got to be able to have the foresight to see ahead and not be like a colleague of mine who used to be a principal who changed a grade in a class, curved grades because a teacher was out on leave. And by doing so, changed who the valedictorian was going to be.
No. If they only lost their job, they were lucky. They were lucky they didn't get shot. I'm at home at Lake Norman tonight, rather than in my other place. So I'm home here with all the rich people. And you better believe that it is in this community where hardly any of the kids that if they're somewhat athletic, they go to Huff, which is a big 4 AA high school here, Lake Norman, in the northern part of Mecklenburg County. If they're somewhat athletic, they go there because they have superior athletic teams. But you know, we got kids here that go to the Cannon School. We got kids here that go to Davidson Day School. We've got kids here that go to the most elite private school with private academies. And their parents live and die by the GPA, who's going to be valedictorian, salutatorian. And they wouldn't shoot you, but they'd hire somebody. They got enough money here, they'd hire somebody to shoot you. You better believe it. It is the topic of conversation at the clubhouse, at the yacht club, and at Peninsula, at the golf course. I mean, it is a way of life here. It's scholarships. It's Ivy League acceptance to Harvard, Yale, even to Davidson, which literally is across the street. Davidson is literally right over there. I can see the steeple when the leaves are off over the water here. And Davidson College, I mean, that's, most people would kill to get in. That's kind of like the safety school around here. Most of the kids, for whatever reason, we've had a run of kids in our neighborhood going to Wake Forest, which is just up the road. It's about 50 minutes from Wake Forest. We have a lot of kids that go to Wake. We've got 2 at Duke right now. The Carr's middle child, the oldest daughter, Julia, is at Duke on a full ride. These kids, they're all about it here. We have several at the Ivies, Davidson, Duke, Chapel Hill is kind of like a safety school. NC State, Chapel Hill are kind of like safety schools around here, and so they would kill for an eighth of a QP here, quality point. You better know that. You have people on either end. That was described tonight, that that half a point is what's keeping them from passing, getting their driver's license or whatever on the other end. But that half point might keep one of them out of, they think it'll keep one of them out of one of the premier privates in the country on the other end, and everything in between. There's a lot of stuff that's attached to this. You got to know that. So grading is your business. All right, to go down the list here, and I says I'll go quicker. To make accurate reports to the superintendent and local board. That's how we started. Can't be late.
What the fuck?
Can't be wrong. Can't be incomplete. Got to understand that. Come on now. All right. To improve instruction and community spirit, that's your job. To improve instruction. That couldn't be any clearer than that. Professional growth plan that you did last semester that we used for task 2 of the OMA this semester. Why do you think we had you do that? There is a responsibility, a duty, a law that says you will improve instruction. That's what that professional growth plan is all about. It's about improving the master schedule. That meets that law right there. conduct fire drills and fire hazards. Yeah, I told you when the first thing we did was the safety and crisis box and all that, and we have to do the inventory. As I told you, everybody knows you have to do a monthly fire drill. But a lot of folks don't know it's not the fire drill that gets you. It's that twice a month safety inspection. When something goes wrong in your school and you haven't got that documented, that's when you get caught. That's that again, that you got to do that twice a month and it must be documented. It's your responsibility. It's your duty. See, that's where it says duty right there. That means it's the law. To inspect the buildings and discharge at least twice a month, and document. Has to be done. To discipline students and assign duties to teachers with regard to discipline, well-being, and medical care of students. We're going to do a brief introduction into, and we'll do discipline next week, but it is your responsibility. It is your duty to do it. To protect school property, again, you got to inspect your building and keep it up. Report certain acts of law enforcement. You've got to do your disciplinary data reporting in Power School. We don't report suspensions, we report incidents. That's one of that's where people get caught on that when they think, well, if I don't suspend a kid, I don't have to tell anybody. That's incorrect. You win the booty prize. We don't report outcomes, we report incidents. Regardless of what you did, you have to report. You have to make those notifications. You have to tell the superintendent certain things. You have to tell law enforcement certain things. You will make available your school budget and school improvement plan that we work with. Those are public documents. To evaluate certified employees and develop action plans. That's that professional growth plan again. Transfer student records, sign driving eligibility. That's what Dr. Allman was talking about. That's all of, and Dr. Griffin Jordan, that's all about that GPA. Establish school improvement teams. There you go. Those are the things you got to do. And then here's your ethical paradigm that's written into your contract. There are 4: justice, care, critique, and profession. We'll get to that one. And this is an explanation of those. So not only do you have to carry out the law, you also have to do it in an ethical manner. But those are the things that you are charged with doing. As I said, it's got to be on time, it's got to be right, it's got to be complete. It says right there in the law that you have to make these reports to the superintendent and the school board. And if your stuff is late or not on time or not complete or it's wrong, you can be fired for that because the law says you have to do it that way. And that's when I would have to be the bad guy as the deputy and go out and say, what were you doing that we weren't paying you for, that kept you from doing what we were? You know, this is state law. We must have this stuff. It must be on time. It must be complete. It must be right. You know, there's not a lot. I don't have a lot of discretion here. This is your one time. Next time I start looking for a new office. That's just the way this business works. There's a lot of things that you can do or not do as a principal, but now the law things, you have to do them. And they must be on time, correct, and complete. Always. It's got to be always. Can't be every now and then. It's got to be always. All right. I want to briefly tonight, I think I've covered everything that I want to cover. Again, I want to introduce 2 items to you tonight in preparation for next week. Next week's going to be about discipline. There's a lot. A fellow told me a long time ago, the best way to get out of a swamp is not get in it. And so before we talk about discipline reporting and code of conduct and handbooks and arbitrary and capricious and all that next week, I want to talk to you about what's really important about discipline, which is prevention. And so I've got a couple of documents I want to share with you. The first one is bullying prevention. Bullying is a big deal. Unfortunately, in our society, a lot of young people self-harm. And a lot of it goes back to bullying. And so what I have in here for you, every school, according to, and I'll show you this next week, every school is required to have a bullying prevention program. And this is what it would look like. This one is not the best one I've ever seen, but and so it gives some background and what you can do to stop bullying. But the important thing about it is you're going to have to develop one of these, or you're going to have to be in charge to make sure that you have your counseling staff or somebody, your special POP staff, somebody in your school has got to develop a school bullying prevention program, not just a reporting function after it happens. More importantly, a bullying prevention. Bullying leads to violence. It leads to bringing guns to school. One of my interns at Albemarle High School was on yard guard, was on supervision at the front door. Not too many years passed, and a kid who was being bullied brought a gun and shot a kid right in front of him, and then turned the gun on him. But he was handing it to him, and he handed him the gun. He decided didn't want to be. He was doing his clinical. He decided he didn't want to be a school administrator. After that, when, kid gets killed right in front of you, literally 6 feet away. But that kid had been bullying. A dozen stories. All of you do. You're in the business of what happens when kids bully other kids. It gets to parents. What was it in Charlotte Mecklenburg last week? A parent got on the bus and attacked the kid who was bullying her kid. And so self-harm, people being bullied on social media. Such a tragedy over the weekend. A young lady, a celebrity from Charlotte, jumped out of a building in New York because of social media backlash, and was a brilliant young lady. Was Miss USA, was an attorney, 30 years old. What a waste of life. And so it's pervasive in our society, especially with social media. And so you need to develop a bullying prevention program. As I said, next week, we're going to talk about the reporting and what to do when it happens. This week, just briefly, I want to focus on it's more important to try to prevent it if you can. So Megan's got a question, a hand raised. Do we have a hand raised? The question?
Yes, sir. I did.
Go right ahead.
My question was, and if both of our principals could kind of address it, what do you do when a teacher is in non-compliance and insubordinate in terms with the policies that have been agreed upon and established for when it comes to grading, when they're just refuse to make those types of changes or accommodations?
Well, if you're referring to like the final grade we were talking about earlier, just remember as a principal, you do have the final say. You do award the grades, but the conversations need to be had early on, and you need to document everything. I'm a former school counselor. I document everything. I keep all messages. You never know when you may need it, so I document everything, and then I have my assistant principal come in. It's good to have someone else in there with you. And then it's going to be reflective on their evaluation. I'll let them know, in addition to documenting it, sending them a briefing of the meeting that we had. That's further documentation through email. I will let it be shown on their evaluation, and eventually that proficient will drop down to developing, and then they will end up documenting their way on out if they're not able to be in compliance with the standards and what your expectations are.
Forgive me if I ask a further question, because I'm in South Carolina. Are your recertification evaluations every 5 years, every 10 years, or is it annually for every teacher?
Certification is a 5-year cycle for certification, but we have, especially our comprehensive teachers, they have 3 evaluations per year, and then a summative.
Okay, because in South Carolina, you're really only certified, or you're only evaluated really truthfully every 5 years when you're up for recertifications.
So one of the differences for North Carolina is that teachers are actually on an evaluation schedule every year. So the North Carolina really does not have tenure the way it used to be. And I think that's been a big change for us in the last 8 years. So every teacher is actually observed a minimum of twice a year, but a principal can at any point in time add observations. So it's not something where if you see something that's a problem, then you can always add additional observations, and all of those do impact their overall licensure. And I guess contract is probably the better word to use for within a district, because it's really not the license that we're talking about. It's really their employment contract. Teachers are either on a 1-year, 2-year, or 4-year contract in North Carolina. And if they are on a 4-year contract, then they have been found to be proficient by the district, and they are a career teacher. But at any point in time, if there is a problem, they can actually be shunted back to a 1-year contract if there's something that's occurred. So there's a little more teeth to that now, so that teachers don't feel like they can just thumb their nose at what's being done. But I think, like Dr. Griffin Jordan was saying, those conversations should happen much earlier. You document it. You don't just document it, you make sure the documentation's in the right kind of place. It's not just the email, it's a follow-up with a formal letter. It may need to be a formal letter that goes in their personnel file if you see what they're doing is unethical. And then you can always attach any of that to their summative evaluation in North Carolina, and it can actually be attached as an actual document. So it adds several layers there where you can increase that, and then you can even put them on a directed action or a directed professional development plan for the next year, and include some of those very specific things that they have to do from that point on, without it actually going to HR.
So a very astute question. This is the last question that I ask our resident principals at our first case study. You have a teacher who intentionally used the grading scale punitively, did not follow the state and local adopted policy. What would you do with that teacher? Now, it's real simple for me. That teacher could not work for me. Now, you don't have to go through the licensure and evaluation route. I mean, in a case like this, what you're talking about, that's insubordination. That teacher can be dismissed summarily. You don't have to wait 5 years till their license is up or to the end of the year. I mean, if you tell this person don't do this or do this and they don't, and you document that they didn't do that, this person can be dismissed. North and South Carolina are right to work states. There is no union. You have no property right to a job. Now, I'm a little stronger than Dr. Holloman in terms of I didn't like tenure when teachers had it. They have career status now, but I do not believe in tenure. I believe in performance. That's just me individually. But this isn't when teachers won't follow state law and local policy on grading. That's not an evaluation to me. I mean, that's something that is insubordination and is a fireable offense. You cannot allow teachers to abuse kids. Number one rule in school: can't allow teachers to abuse kids physically, emotionally, mentally. You can't allow that. You can't allow a teacher to say this throwaway assignment that was just a take-home deal and come back that should have been worth 1/10 of 1 point. It's now worth more than half the yearly grade. You fail, you're out for it. I don't care if Billy is a turd. I mean, that's the first thing that I'll tell you when we get ready to do the case study. I freely acknowledge Billy's a turd. But that don't mean you can abuse it. And so that's what we're talking about here. You cannot allow teachers to use the grading scale punitively to punish kids and to abuse kids.
I'll give you a very real moment that I had with a teacher. It's been probably 12 years ago. Mid-year grades impact, by Dr. Griffin Jordan was saying, athletic eligibility. And this teacher knew that their class, because the student was only taking 3 classes, that if they failed one of three, they're a senior, first semester senior, that they would not be eligible to continue playing basketball for the remainder of the season. That teacher absolutely intentionally tanked their grades just enough over the course of the semester to make sure that they failed the class. And the student had documentation, could show us how it was done. And the teacher actually did freely admit to one of their colleagues that they did it because they were tired of seeing that student on the basketball court. That teacher didn't keep their job.
No,
I mean,
no.
you can't keep your job after doing something like that.
no. When somebody does something to intentionally try to harm a kid, I'm sure you've read it, but the first case study is a baseball player. And it's the whole that's that kind of thing. Now, remembering that even if the district offers an alternative to the year-long expulsion, which failing a grade is a year expulsion, even with like summer school, that still doesn't mean it's not punitive, and it still doesn't mean it's a zero tolerance. It still doesn't mean that you have excluded a kid without due process. It still doesn't mean that you haven't broken the law and harmed the child. I mean, if teachers who won't follow the grading system, that is insubordination, and they don't. You cannot allow them to continue to work for you. You just can't, because this is the very heart of the social contract that you have with parents and loco parentis, that you'll take care of their children, that you will not abuse their children. They get enough abuse elsewhere. You can't allow kids to be abused in your building. And so the other document that I had tonight to preface, and I'll just introduce it, is antecedent behaviors. Let me look at it quickly. Identification and prevention of antecedent behaviors is to assist schools in decreasing violent acts on the campus. That's what we're talking about. It's your job to take care of kids. Bullying prevention, you would rather prevent it than deal with it after it happens. We'll talk about the aftermath next week, but take a look at this. I hired a criminologist when I was in central office at CMS. We put this together. This was the keynote address a few years back at the big state conference at Curry in Greensboro that I did. And I took Ryan with me, but here's the things that we know when we're talking about that cyberbullying and bullying, sexual harassment, sexting, and gang activity lead to violent things like death, dismemberment, suicide, kidnapping, weapons, drugs. These are the things, the little things become the big things. If you see a lot of public displays of affection, you'll have sexual incidents. You'll have sexual offense, rape, sexual assault, indecent liberties. You'll have those things. If you have gang activity, you'll have drugs and weapons shortly thereafter and serious assaults. If you have bullying and cyberbullying, you'll have serious assaults, weapons, you'll have suicides. If you allow the sexual stuff, especially if it's done via phones, if you allow that, you will have offenses. The little things become the big things. That you've got to address them while they're in their earliest, their antecedent stages, if you want to prevent the big things from happening. And you want to keep your kids safe and your faculty safe. That's your responsibility. So it's best to try to deal with things before they happen. Nip them in the bud, as Barney would say, when they're little, rather than letting them get big and out of control. But you have a duty and responsibility. It's called in loco parentis, in place of the parent. You have a responsibility to protect these children from one another and from adults that would prey on them and do ugly things or mean things or harmful things to them. That is understood in your job, the role of the principal. Thank you for joining us tonight. Next week, we'll dive into discipline, what you do when these things do happen. You hope that they don't, but you have to be prepared when they do, and all the reporting pieces, all the due process that you have to afford each of these children that do commit these discipline infractions. We'll talk about that and code of conducts and reporting to the state and all of those kinds of things. That's what we'll talk about next week. We appreciate you being with us tonight. As always, thank you for joining us, and we will see you all next week. Everybody have a good week. Stay safe. Wear your mask. Get your shots. Good night.
Thank
All
you
right,
for
guys, have a
taking my
good night.
question.
Good night.
Night.